like she said, I'm from Credit Union West. I will tell you before we even get started, this is not a Credit Union West sales pitch, whatever. I will touch on a couple of the services that we offer for members, but we've been doing financial education classes in the community for at least 2 years that I know of. We do classes with the City of Surprise, City of Avondale. We just started with Goodyear, City of Peoria, and we've actually done some classes as well in several high schools. And pretty much any group that wants to learn about a financial topic, you know, we just say, let us know, and we'll come out and help teach, because we really do feel like, you know, when we send, especially high schoolers, we send people out in the world and we say manage your money well, but we don't necessarily do a very good job teaching people. And it's so there are, you know, people in all walks of life that may stumble from time to time. And I used to be a financial advisor for about 5 years, and I used to always tell my clients, the only thing you can get quick is poor. And it's really hard once you get into that situation to try to rebuild and get back on track. So we really do these financial education classes just to try to help people out and make sure that you are equipped with information. Last week, and we have a few returning from last week's class. Last week we did a class on understanding your credit score. And I would say you guys learned a new thing or two, right? Okay, so that's good. I mean, we really do get good feedback on the sessions that we've done, and we are constantly looking out there at different resources. So as information changes, we try to keep our information updated as well. So the topic tonight is identity theft protection. Just kind of curious with the group here, has anybody been a victim of identity theft? Been a victim, sorry. Been a victim, yeah. Has anybody benefited from identity theft? Wow, if anybody answers yes to that, I'm going to be afraid, okay? That was good.
Yes, I think we were years ago, somebody used our MasterCard number, and I got a call real early on the phone. I was at home, and it was, we have our MasterCard through Citibank, and they said there's some unusual activity on your account. We want to make sure these charges, you actually indeed made these charges. And I was like, okay, because I'd never got a call like that before. And
yeah.
They said, we noticed, and I didn't realize they have people scan everybody's account, humans.
They're getting much better at that.
And they said, and I said, well, how did you notice this? And they said, well, we have people look at everybody's, and they said, you never order anything online, you never certain things, and they ordered a bunch of stuff from Amazon.com, and I said, oh, I'm aware of the company, but I've never ordered anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then, plus there was a whole row of pizzas somebody ordered in California. And
oh, nice.
It turns out my husband the week before stayed at a hotel in California, and that's when they had carbons. They used to just tear them up.
Right.
Maybe somebody got the carbon out and ordered a bunch of pizzas and stuff off Amazon.com.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of damage as far as somebody using your credit card and that kind of stuff. Okay. Have you?
I was telling this gentleman, we were waiting out there. I was telling this gentleman, we went to Palm Valley Theater by Target at 1 in the afternoon for a movie. We came out at 3 o'clock. Well, we have a van. I left my purse in the middle, in the back seat, between the seats. And they broke into it. And I got home. I had one credit card, M&I Bank, one credit card, and I wanted to quick get home. Okay, got the number out, got my account number. So when I rang it up, dialed it.
Yeah.
Put it on the phone. It says press 2 for a stolen card, which I did, and it says put your credit card number in. I did. So then a man came on the line. He said, "Oh, I see they caught a woman and 3 men."
Wow.
Well, you know. Well, what they did was they went across the street to Best Buy to buy a huge TV, and then he also told me, he says, well, the lady is half your age. And
that,
so anyway, the clerk was very, well, of course, you know, it was, I think they charged $2,800 television.
wow.
So she was, of course, asked for the ID, gave her my driver's license, so she was
That was good.
And the
You're
birth date, yeah.
you're very fortunate that they caught that, because I don't know if, again, I teach so many classes, so if I told you this story last week, I'm sorry, but we were in Hawaii. My mother-in-law paid for a trip for my daughter and myself, and the day before we were checking out of our hotel, I thought, well, I'll just run over to double check and make sure everything's okay with the room, and my mother-in-law said, well, here's my credit card in case they need to run it again, and it has her picture on the credit card. And when I went over to the front desk, I handed it to the desk clerk, and he said, aren't these pictures great on the credit card because it keeps somebody, from stealing your identity? Proceeds to run the card. I signed my mother-in-law's name. I get back over to the room and I said, you are not going to believe this. I mean, so, know that the stuff that we're going to cover tonight, we are going to talk about different ways that thieves get your information, whether they're stealing it blatantly by stealing a purse out of a car or something like that, stealing your wallet, or there's many ways. I will tell you, there is not 100% guarantee. If somebody really, really wants your information, it's amazing how they can get it. But what we're hopefully going to do is you'll leave here with a few more ideas of how you can minimize your risk to having your identity stolen.
Have you been picked up for forgery?
I should have, but my mother-in-law let me do that. I kind of joke with her because one of her credit cards was on my credit report, so it's turnabout fair play, right? As we go through the information in the packets that are in front of you, there's a little booklet. You can follow along, take notes as we go through the information. If you can, if we're covering a particular subject that you have a question about, let me know. I like to try to hold as many questions until the end in case we are covering the information as we get a little bit further into the material. The other thing to think about is, as we go through our day, we might write a check, we use a credit card, or we use a debit card. There are lots of opportunities where somebody can get a hold of our information. And like I said, you can't totally protect yourself, but hopefully we'll get some ideas, get some tools to protect ourselves a little bit better. What is identity theft? Let's first kind of just define what it is. You guys are going to be talkative again tonight, aren't you? What is identity theft? Okay, go ahead.
When someone gets your personal information and goes out and presents themselves as you.
Perfect definition. Perfect. Whether it's, birth dates, social security number, any kind of identification, they're presenting themselves as you. We've had people report identity theft. Somebody was arrested and they presented themselves as somebody else. So they weren't stealing the identity necessarily to open new accounts or do things like that. They just didn't want their name showing up as being arrested, so they gave them somebody else's. In case you weren't aware, Arizona is #1 for identity theft 5 years in a row.
Why? Why Arizona?
Great question. I can tell you what the Attorney General thinks as far as why we are ranked #1. One is we have a large senior population, and that has typically been an easy target. One is because of proximity to the border, people stealing identity to obtain employment. And another reason that they suspect we're #1 is because of drug use. I was listening to the Attorney General on the radio, and they were talking about how now when they go on meth bus, they'll take an identity theft person because about 80% of the time they find stolen identities, stolen credit cards, things like that. So there's a lot of different reasons why somebody might do that, but that's kind of why they attribute maybe it's higher in Arizona. What kind of impact does it have on a victim of identity theft? Well, it certainly is going to probably damage your credit if they're out there running up, accounts in your name or whatever, not paying for it. You could be denied loans or credit cards because of the damage to your credit report. Loss of employment opportunities. Last week when we were talking about credit score, one of the things that employers will check, especially like in my case, because I work in a credit union, they will pull our credit as a condition of employment. And if I don't have a very good credit score, that could prevent me from getting a job. That's one of the things that could happen, because if somebody stole my identity and my credit score ended up being really low, that could prevent me from getting the job that I'm applying for. Also, legal ramifications. Like I said, if somebody steals my identity and they're arrested and they say, hey, I'm Amy Graham, how is that going to affect me later? So that's just some of the things that can make or that can impact me if I'm a victim of identity theft. Who do you think is vulnerable for being a victim? Who's at risk at being a victim of identity theft? All of us, right? And I mentioned one group. Seniors typically have been, I don't want to say an easy target, but kind of an easier target. I think because there's a lot of trust there. And again, when we get into some of the ways that that thieves are getting your identity, I think you'll see where some of these come into play. Another one that's becoming more prevalent is children. Children are getting their identities stolen. Why do you think that is?
I've heard this on the news, because it won't catch up with them for like 10 years until they go to apply for credit or a credit card or something.
Absolutely. We've had people in classes, because I typically start the class saying, hey, has anybody been a victim? And I've had people say, yeah, my 7-year-old son, somebody stole his identity to get employment somewhere. Typically with children, and I would encourage, if you're checking your credit report or anything like that, check your child's social security number. If they say there is no report on file, that's good news, because a child would not have a report until they turn 18 or until they actually, because they're not eligible to be under any kind of credit contract until they're 18. So if you find they have a report, that should be a red flag. Hey, something's going on here. Okay. High income households. Again, anybody who has a high credit score, and high income households don't necessarily mean a good credit score, but they can be a big target for identity theft. So what do crooks do with the information once they steal it from you? Open new accounts. They sell it. Or that whole drug thing. If I can get some good identities and I can sell them over here and get money to do with whatever I want to do with, that's one thing. We talked about seeking employment, running up purchases. I love the series of TV commercials that they had running for a while, where you see this little tiny woman with like a big burly guy voice, and it's talking about, oh look, I bought this and I bought this, and yeah, I thought those were very, just kind of in your face commercials that really showed what can happen there. One of the biggest problems with identity theft, obviously it costs victims, whether somebody's charging, running up accounts, whatever. That costs you monetarily. The other thing, and probably, I think in a lot of cases is a larger complaint, is the hours that it takes somebody to restore their good name. If you have your identity stolen, now you got to contact the credit bureaus. Now you got to contact the police department. Now you got to contact, and it feels like you've got to jump through hoops to justify no, that really wasn't me, that was somebody else, which seems a little backwards, but that is the way it is. And people can spend hundreds of hours of their own time going back through and restoring their name. It really just kind of depends on how much damage that person has done with that identity. So we're going to go through and talk about the 3 Ds of identity theft. We're going to deter identity thefts by safeguarding your information. We're going to detect suspicious activity, and we're going to defend against identity theft as soon as we suspect a problem. Okay, so we are going to dive right in and talk about how thieves get your information. So we're going to define a few terms. And the first one on there is called phishing, but it's Phishing. Anybody know what phishing is?
On a computer?
Yeah.
Typically an email that's sent to you trying to get information from you or have you go to a website to download information, personal information.
Yes, and the reason they call it phishing is because they basically throw out a giant mass email of some sort, and Credit Union West has been a victim of this too, but like typically an email, let's say Bank of America. If I throw out 10,000 emails and say, Bank of America is going through some security updates, we need you to click on this link to verify your information. Number one, any financial institution or government agency will never, ever, ever ask for you to verify information through an email. It will look official. As a matter of fact, in your packet, there's an example of a phishing email from the IRS. And the reason these are so effective is like in that example of Bank of America. I might send out 10,000 emails. Do you think there's a chance I might catch a couple people that actually have accounts at Bank of America? That's the hook. That's why they call it phishing. It's because they throw this blanket email out there. You know, in that sample from the IRS one, it says you're entitled to a $68.30 refund. Click here. Now, I'm sure, well, we all know if it's the IRS, they're going to probably ask for my social security number and my birth date, right? Boom, they've caught me. If I've clicked on that link and I verified that information, somebody has now captured that.
I just want to stress the part of, I mean, banking, but government will never ask for that information either.
Yeah. When in doubt, err on the safe side. And if you know, let's say if it was Credit Union West, because again, I got notified from one of the other cities that we teach. They said, Amy, I got this email saying that if I don't go on here and verify this information, I'm going to be locked out of my account. And he knew that he didn't have an account with us. And I said, have you not been listening to any of my classes that we've been teaching for you? That is a classic phishing email. He just wanted to let us know that it was being used.
Yeah, I was going to say, I get probably once a month, I get emails like that from either PayPal or eBay.
Yep.
Asking to verify information. And then I report it to PayPal and eBay, and they thank me for reporting it.
Yeah, I mean,
It's once a month, though.
if you're only getting them once a month, you're lucky. I get them every day. I get them at work. When you get emails, sometimes they come in the form of, you know, I'm getting this inheritance, but I need to have the money transferred to a bank account in the United States and whatever. Those are all scams. Those are all phishing emails, scams. Some of them could be a farming email. Don't you love this? Fishing, farming. You feel like we're out in the country? Farming is a similar type thing. The difference between phishing and farming is phishing is going to have you click on something and you verify personal information. Farming email, sometimes if you click on the link, it can download a virus or spyware that when you type in a legitimate website, it will redirect you to kind of a copycat site. So, you know, if you don't know who the email's from, err on the side of safety. Don't click on any links and things like that in email. Again, steps to defend against phishing and farming. I can't stress enough, any reputable company, financial information, doctor's office, government, they are never going to ask you to verify information. I wouldn't be surprised if you see, if any of you get phishing emails, you might see one exactly like the IRS one in the next coming months. January to March, and are we getting into tax time? Those become very popular then. And again, the reason they're so effective, and this is one I think that's probably more effective with seniors who aren't necessarily that savvy with computers, again, they prey on the fear. Because if I tell you, I'm going to lock your funds, you won't be able to access your account unless you verify this information. Doesn't that kind of scare you, going, oh, wait a minute, I need to get to my money? When in doubt, call the financial institution. Say, I just received an email from you saying my account's going to be locked. Is this true? They'll tell you. It will never be from the financial institution. You know, when I teach these classes, it's kind of funny because when I do budgeting and I talk about good money habits, I oftentimes use my daughter as an example. When I talk about identity theft, unfortunately, I use my husband as an example because he's really bad about, several of these things. Yeah, so anyway, I'll probably bring him up a time or two on what not to do. Don't use links that are in emails. If you are getting phishing emails, there is a website, or an email address on here. If you want to forward the email to the Federal Trade Commission, you can. They have a section that does nothing but reports phishing emails, and you would not believe the thousands that they have in their database, saying, oh, here's the latest one. Don't complete forms that are in email. Practice good cybersecurity. 2 ways that you can check to see if you are on like a secure website, if you're entering personal information, is 1, if it has a picture of the little padlock down, like on the Internet Explorer or whatever you use, there's usually a padlock. The other thing is in the web address where it says like HTTP, it'll have an S if you're on a secure website, which is encrypted differently. If it doesn't have the S, definitely don't put personal information on there. Use unique passwords whenever possible. I won't ask by a show of hands how many people use, pets' names, kids' names. Even that, you can mix it up a little if you throw in a number or 2 in the middle. Not like, my daughter's name followed by her birth date. That might not be a good password, but you want to mix it up a little. And if you're like me, I have to change my password, I think it's like every 60 or 90 days. It's often at work on a couple different systems that we have. And so I kind of have a system where I only change out the number part of it. Maybe it's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3. So it's not so hard to remember. But it mixes it up a little. So that's one idea.
Another thing is upper and lowercase characters.
Yep.
Password, because people always do just lowercase or
Yeah. Upper, lowercase, or even.
Start out with a number and then do the rest lower and then a number.
Yeah, or throw a symbol in there, the @ or they just won't let you use the /1 or the period. I think those both of those won't work. Anyway, but yeah, you can throw a symbol or uppercase, lowercase. Good suggestion. If you've ever been on Windows and it says, hey, do you want Windows to remember your password? And you say, oh, please, because I can't remember it. Not a good idea, because there's actually a file on your computer that has all your passwords remembered or listed. And if somebody wanted to hack into your system, they know what file to look for. and it has all your passwords listed. So.
Do you know what that file name is?
I don't know I'm sure it's past something, but it's going to be, he's going, okay, I've done that, and now I need to get that file off there.
Well,
You
the
know,
worst thing is if somebody gets on your computer and they go to that website, it remembers your password they're in. You don't even have to look it up in the file.
well, yeah, that's true. If you don't clean out all your cookies, that's one way. If it's like an internet password or something like that, if you go in and delete all of your cookies and temporary internet files, it'll wipe that stuff out because you have to go back in and reset them.
There's actually another one on there. There's like 4 different things.
Yeah.
And there's one that says passwords and keystrokes and something like that. Remember where you typed in, remember that. You click on that and it'll delete all of this stuff.
Yeah. And that's one that maybe I can do a little bit of research if you want to leave like name or, well, we've got names back there. Do we have contact information, email or anything? Okay, because if you guys want, I can do a little research and send an email out and say, hey, here's the part that I didn't know during class. Okay, I can do that. Antivirus software, good idea to have it. Keep it up to date. When there's new updates to software, it's a good idea to update that because there's constantly, every time there's a new antivirus software or they call it a virus definition, every time there's a new virus, there's a new fix to that virus. So, and then there's somebody writing another virus to get around that. So it's a good idea to keep that stuff up to date. And then take precautions if you're using like Wi-Fi, wireless networks. I have a wireless network set up at my house. It's a secure wireless network. There's a really long password that you have to set up and everything when you're setting it up. But that keeps anybody from, driving through my neighborhood with a laptop going, hey, there's a internet access that I can get to. So again, just things to think about. And if you're not sure how to set that stuff up, that's something that I think is worth, a little bit of money to make sure it's set up correctly and all of that. Okay, so, and I love this one. This one I borrowed from one of my coworkers. And we won't embarrass anybody here, but we'll probably be able to tell by chuckles. Anybody got passwords hidden under their keyboard? Okay, that's good. That's a common one. Where's your passwords? Or tape to the front of your computer monitor. That's another good one.
What about written down in a little notebook?
Depends on where the notebook is. Not necessarily a bad idea if you can't remember, but be mindful of where the notebook is. If it's in the drawer, in the pencil drawer, probably not a good idea.
I have to tell on my husband, all our passwords are in our Outlook in a contact named passwords.
Do you have a password to get into your Outlook?
Well, that's a good point. No.
Set one. Because that's one thing that I've used, especially, I used to work on Air Force bases around the world, and they have, for different systems, I had passwords that I couldn't pick what the password was, and I had, there was no sense to any of the passwords that I had, and there's just no way you're going to remember those. So if you put all those passwords behind something that's password protected, that's a little added level of security. So just food for thought. Okay, so any questions about fishing or farming? Pretty good there? Okay. Nobody's going fishing or farming. Skimming. Anybody know what skimming is? These are fun little names, huh? Skimming is, I don't know if any of you saw the news story. There's been a couple of them. Skimming is actually a little electronic device, and I'm telling you, it can be, smaller than palm size. It can be put on, there were a couple instances. One was put on the face of an ATM, so when you swiped your ATM card, it actually had a skimming device over it. so the skimmer was actually collecting the card information. And then there was another one where it was at a gas station. So when you slid the card, the skimmer was gathering the card information. And the reason that I bring that up is because you want to be mindful. If you're using an ATM, if you're using anything where you swipe your card, look at the device. If it looks a little funky, like there might be something over it or whatever, just be careful of that. And like I said, it can be a handheld thing. We get stories all the time, but there was an instance where, where's one place where you pay with your credit card or debit card or whatever, where they take your card, they go somewhere else. Restaurants. That's where this kind of becomes more popular, because that wait staff can take that card, they go somewhere else, they run the card through the skimmer, then they also, charge your card for the meal you just had. And what that skimmer does is it gathers card information. So it has your number, it has all that information, and then they can download all that information and create duplicate cards. Very popular. So one thing that I will say as a caution is, typically when you're using a credit card, if somebody were to get a hold of your identity off of a credit card, they could run up charges, and it will take time to get those charges off. But as soon as you report it, then the credit card company says, okay, and they'll start an investigation on those charges. With a debit card, because anytime you run your debit card, it pulls that money immediately out of your checking account, I would caution using debit cards at restaurants, or possibly even ordering stuff online. Because if somebody were to steal your identity that way, you're still, as long as you report it quickly, you're not going to be liable for the charges that anybody runs up on that debit card. But do you have, if they wipe out your checking account, do you have funds somewhere to kind of keep you going while the investigation is going on? So for places, and this is just me personally, one thing that I do is, if I'm paying somewhere where the person is taking a card away from my site, I don't pay with a debit card. I pay with a credit card. And it's, again, I can't protect myself 100%, but that's just one thing that I'm a little bit more cautious about. Another thing that you can do in a restaurant is, if you want to pay with a debit card or whatever, or credit card, you can say, can I go up to the cash register to pay this? You can do that. That is your option. Just because they set it down on your table doesn't mean you have to do it that way. So, skimming, wonderful little thing. Telling you, creative. Okay, so we already talked about how to deter. The other thing is to also check your statements. When you guys get your credit card statements, or you're looking at your checking account, debit card transactions online, or however you do that, are you looking at it closely? Like, I have a couple things that are charged to my credit card automatically every month, in addition to, whatever fun money I want to spend. That's something I still sit down and look. And there have been a few times where I'm going, wow, I don't remember what that charge is. And usually near every charge, there's a phone number beside it. So if you have a question about the charge, you can call and say, hey, I'm not really sure what this charge is. And they'll say, oh, that was for that. And I usually go, oh, yeah, I remember buying that. But, in the case that maybe it wasn't, just want to be careful. Make sure you review those statements. Okay, this one's really an easy one. Dumpster diving. Pretty self-explanatory. It is what it is. It is what it sounds like. This is still one of the most common ways that identities are being stolen. Isn't that amazing? We talk to people about shredding personal information. You gotta do it. Is any shredder good? It can be. The best kind are going to be some sort of cross-cut shredder or confetti shredder. It cuts it up into such small little pieces that nobody in their right mind would want to sit there and try to put that back together. Highly recommend that, because the strip, what do they call them, strip shredders, the one that does like the long spaghetti pieces. Yeah, well, if your information's on the paper that way, you're really not shredding anything. You've got a whole line of information there. So again, you just want to be mindful. Cross-cut shredder. If you are getting rid of old credit cards, what do? Do you cut them up? There are shredders that will...
Cross-cut shredders down to the credit card.
Yep. Or, and again, this is... people, you guys will probably think, man, she's paranoid. If you don't have a shredder that's going to cut up your credit cards, shred your credit cards, what can you do? Well, if you cut it up, don't throw it all away in your house. Throw it in like 5 different garbage cans wherever.
Like 1 week and throw the rest out the next week.
Yeah, I mean, there are little things, but it can make a big difference. So, yeah, see, by the end, you guys will be going, wow, she's nuts. Hopefully not.
The other thing is, don't put your stuff out the night before if you don't have to.
Yeah, that is a good...
So that they're not coming until 10 o'clock in the morning, and you put your garbage out, the morning.
Yeah, put it out right before.
Do that, because that gives everybody all night to rummage through your stuff.
Yeah. And, again, it's not even just your information like what you're throwing out. It's okay to ask companies that you deal with, doctor's offices, any place where you're giving personal information, ask them, how do you destroy your information? I will tell you, and I couldn't make this stuff up. We had one class that we did in Surprise, and this lady worked for a doctor's office, and she said, our doctor just had us go through some records that were like 10 years old. They dumped everything in the dumpster. Is that illegal? Probably somewhere. I'm sure they have regulations on what they need to do with that information. And she said, I'm just telling you. Of course, everybody else in the class went, okay, what doctor is that? we want to know. Can you talk to us after class? Know this information. I had somebody else who was new to town, went to the dentist. She had another appointment like on the other side of town, and had asked the receptionist, hey, can you tell me how to get to this place? So the lady wrote down the information on how to get there. She gets there, flipped the paper over, name, social security number, birth date. Amazing, amazing thing. So really, I'm not making this stuff up. It does happen. So you need to know about the companies that you're dealing with. What are you doing with your personal information? How do you destroy it? You need to ask those questions. Okay, mail theft. Mail theft is another very popular way that people are getting identities. If you live in one of those areas where they have the community boxes, those are a great target. Why? I can get a whole bunch at one time. Just rip the back off of that. I'm bound to come across something. Also, it's kind of funny. I don't know whether it's just being out here and having gone through and finding out just how common identity theft is. Now, when I drive through one of the neighborhoods where they have the mailboxes out front with the red flags, so you're paying your bills, you're letting your mailman know, hey, I got mail in here. You're also letting identity thieves know, hey, there might be a check in here. There might be something in here that has personal information, and here's the big red flag that says, come and get it. I look at that and go, wow, an unlocked mailbox? Oh my gosh, I couldn't even imagine putting anything in an unlocked mailbox these days. So again, just things to be aware of. Avoid placing mail in an unlocked mailbox. That's one big common sense thing. Pick up your incoming mail every day. That's another one. If you can help it, don't leave your mail sit in your mailbox, community mailboxes or whatever, overnight. You want to make sure that you're getting that information. If you're going out of town, even if it's for a few days, number one, whether you have somebody checking your mail, somebody that you know and trust, or it's really easy, you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own home. If you go online and go to USPS.com, the post office will hold your mail. There's a little button that you say, hold my mail. And when you get back, you can say, okay, now it's good to deliver it. And they'll bring it all to your door. You don't even have to go to the post office to start picking up your mail again.
You can even say when you're coming back.
Yep.
Originally.
Yep, you can put in, this is the date I'm leaving, or this is the date I want you to start holding the mail. This is the date I want delivery to start back up. They're making it easy.
You skipped over gel pens. How can you tell if it's a new gel?
And I'm going to come back to that.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I'm glad.
You already
That means
skipped
you're
it.
paying attention. I know. When I put this stuff together, I went, wow, I really put that in the wrong order. I was talking about, like, if you are paying bills, one thing that can happen is if you're writing checks with ballpoint pen or whatever, there are some, we've heard some instances where people have chemical washed the checks. So they, you might have wrote a check to Best Buy for $2,800 for a TV, and you're mailing that in or whatever, and maybe I get a hold of it, I chemical wash that information, and now you're paying Amy Graham $2,800. I just changed the name. There are some types of gel pens, and please don't ask me what kind. And
We want to know if these are.
no, these are not gel pens. These are not gel pens. These, I cannot promise will stand up to chemical washing. But there are some gel pens that specifically say that they can't be chemically washed.
Says it on the.
You could probably, on the description of the pen, not necessarily on the pen itself. It's, yeah, they could tell you. Again, I mean, I don't write that many checks anymore. Maybe one a month. Probably not even that many. So yeah, that's one area that I just can't remember the brand name, but there are pens that can't be chemically washed. Just be mindful of that. See, I'm so glad you're paying attention. You get a treat, so make sure you get cookies or something before you leave.
Well, you said don't interrupt you, and I interrupted you.
No, you're doing fine. Okay, so other ways that thieves are getting information. Shoulder surfing, and again, that is what it sounds like. That's somebody standing over you when you're either at the ATM machine or anything like that where they're trying to see either a PIN number that you're putting in or something like that. Pretexting. This is where, how I said about using passwords, like have you ever used a pet's name or a child's name, whatever. Have you ever been at home and got telephone surveys? Now, some of them may be valid, but some of them also could be what they call pretexting. They're kind of surveying for information. Oh, how many kids do you have? Oh, really? What's their names? That can be a way to systematically figure out what a password might be. So just be aware. Phone, my husband's been banned from talking on the phone. Literally, I'm sitting in the living room. He knows I teach this stuff. Apparently, I don't know, maybe he just wasn't listening. I'm sitting in the living room. I pretty much handle all of our finances. And the phone rings, and I ran upstairs for something. He answers the phone. I come back down, and he is standing there giving his credit card over the phone. I just looked at him. I said, "What are you doing?" "Well, but they said my Golf Digest needed to be renewed, and I didn't want." I'm like, oh, I'm going to shoot you. Number one, you don't know who's calling, and guess what? Caller ID is a cool thing, but there are ways to make caller ID show whatever they want it to show. So if you didn't initiate the phone call, anything like that, if somebody's calling to get that kind of information, don't just readily give it out over the phone, please. And if they say, you know, you could say, well, what's your number? I'll call you back. Guess what? They could give you a fake phone number. So if it's a company that you do business with, take the extra minute to look up their phone number online and see if it matches what the number is that was given to you or whatever. If you didn't initiate the phone call, don't give that kind of information out over the phone.
So if you're initiating the phone call, it's not as bad.
Right, it's not as bad. If you, again, you know clearly who you're calling. It's kind of like, well, and my husband's retired military. So if I call the base for the clinic or whatever, 9 times out of 10, they'll say, oh, what's the last 4 of your husband's social? Or they'll say, will you verify your social or your birth date or whatever? I know who I'm calling. So that would be okay. Okay, employment opportunity, advertisement scams. You know, this is one, actually, my daughter just moved to San Diego, and I encourage her because a lot of times they'll say, oh, you need to put your social if you're applying somewhere on an application. I tell her not to put it until she goes in and interviews. She has, you know, that can be given later, or only put part of the social.
But in the state of California, you have to shred it, and they have to keep them for a year. And she could go back if she's not employed, and ask for it back. If not, she could press charges against the company.
Well, it will eventually be on the application. But I'm saying if she just found out, hey, this person, you know, is advertising for a job, and I go fill out an application and drop it off, you don't have to put your social on it right then.
Correct.
So, yeah.
In this state, though, do you know if we have to?
You don't have to.
No. If they have to keep them or they have to shred them by law.
I'm not sure about that. Yeah, I'm not sure on employment applications what they do.
They have to keep them, I can't tell you how long, but they do have to keep them, because they are subject to be audited by the state to make sure that they're hiring enough all get back.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
How long they have to keep them, I can't tell you, but I do know that
At
they have
least
to
here
keep
in
them.
the city, we have to return, like if you're doing a hiring panel and so you make 10 copies of each person's
Oh, right.
application information, we have to return all of those copies to Human Resources.
And then, yeah, so there's,
And they do whatever they do with them,
that's good. Then they're
so they're not
probably,
out there.
yeah, good information to know.
Good part for scratch paper.
Yeah. HR's got a whole bunch of scratch paper. Yeah, see, winning electronic sweepstakes, you know, that can sometimes come in mail. Actually, email. We had a lady got the same email, got it one week, and luckily she called the surprise police department. She said, do you think that I won this lottery in, you know, wherever it was? And they said, well, number one, have you ever played the lottery there? She said, well, no. Chances are it's probably a scam. The following week, got the same, very similar email saying, please contact us. And she thought, well, they're really trying to get a hold of me. I must have won. She called the police department again. I'm like, again, err on the side of caution. Improperly disposing of electronic equipment. Computers. This is one thing. If you want to donate an old computer or something to a school or wherever, one thing that is very easy to do, and I would recommend to do because hard drives are not that expensive, take your hard drive out and destroy it. Because again, a hard drive is not a very costly thing, and even if you're donating the computer, that's still a good thing. But there are ways that you can delete stuff on hard drives, but there are also ways that you can recover stuff that has been deleted off of hard drives. So err on the side of caution. And it was interesting because I recently had a little computer issue. I think it was operator error. I know just enough to be dangerous, so I really screwed it up. And I couldn't get the data off of it, so I had to actually take it to Geek Squad. And I was talking to them, and they said if they have somebody donates a computer back to them to do whatever with it, they destroy the hard drives. But again, know who you're dealing with.
Well, they have software, or had anyway, that overwrites it with X and O's and X and O's, and if you do that like 2 or 3 times, you can do that to classified hard drive and say it's a good hard drive.
Yeah. Well, and again, you know, it's everything that we throw out here. There are suggestions for, you know, what might be a little bit safer way to do it or whatever. It's, you know, kind of your call. Laptops are a great target. This says last year, but this is actually a little bit old. As you can see, there are a lot of laptops stolen. And if you've ever heard, have you heard of LoJack, you know, the little car system thing that if your car gets stolen, the police can track it? They have LoJack for laptops. Isn't that amazing? But that kind of tells you they're probably getting stolen a lot. So if you're like me, I'm really lazy and, you know, why would I walk upstairs and get on the computer when I can sit down in my living room with my laptop? Anyway, okay, so we talked about a lot of different ways that people can get your information, and I'm sure there are more, and every day there are new and creative ways for people to get your information, but those really are the most common ways, other than just stealing your wallet or stealing your purse. Actually, we'll come back to this. I was going to say, if your purse is stolen and all the cards are still there, has your identity been stolen? Could be. They could have just skimmed all your cards, put them back in there, whatever. So, how do you know if you're a victim? Where do you think would be a good place to look to see if you might be a victim? Check your credit reports. For everybody that was in class last week, check your credit reports, because remember what I said? That's one of the first places identity theft will show up, because you may see charges on you know, $800 charged on your card, and you go, wait a minute, I haven't used that card in a long time. Why all of a sudden is there a balance on there? So it could be one of the first things that you see. If you're denied credit, if you check your credit report on a regular basis, if you know what your credit score is, and then all of a sudden you're getting denied for credit, why is that? Again, number one, any lending institution is going to tell you why you're getting turned down, and if they say it's for something in your credit report, your credit score or whatever, then the FACT Act gives you the right to get a credit report at that time. If it's based on something that's in your credit report, you get it free. Let's see. Here's a good one. Personal information, credit cards, ATM, checks or IDs have been stolen from you. Think about this. This always makes me chuckle. Where do they put the phone number that says, if this card is lost or stolen, call this number? It's on the card. How many of you have an inventory of, here's my account number, here's the number I call if it's stolen? I highly recommend, if you don't have an inventory, that's a really good idea. And where do you keep that inventory? Keep it either in a safety deposit box, somewhere in a locked safe. Keep it somewhere secure. And again, if you don't have a safe at home, you don't have a safety deposit box, how can you protect that information? Maybe put the credit card number on one sheet of paper, put the phone numbers somewhere else, or any other, you know, kind of pertinent information. Don't necessarily store all that information in one location. See, I'm full of a million little ideas. Okay, if your credit card bill doesn't come in the mail, does that mean you don't have to pay it? No, we wish. Remember that little fine print agreement thing that you signed? It didn't say only pay your bill if you get one. And that could be a clue that possibly your identity's been stolen. Because if I am able to intercept your mail and get a hold of a credit card statement, get a hold of that credit card company, and change the address, you may not find out for months because you're not getting a bill, but all of a sudden there's charges on that account. Okay. If you see something wrong on your credit report, obviously report that back to the credit bureau and the company that it's being reported to, if it's a credit card or whatever. If you start getting calls from debt collectors. And I will tell you, this one's been driving me crazy. It happens periodically. My husband, we get somebody, a collection agency that will call our house every day until I call them back and say, this is not the right person. But the name was so close, the only thing that was different was the middle initial. So I said, please verify the last 4 digits of the Social Security for the account that you're calling, or the person that you're calling on. Or they'll say, well, can you verify the Social Security number of your husband? I'm not giving him his social. I tell them, please tell me the last 4 of the social that you're trying to collect for. That is not my husband's social. Please stop calling. Because at some point it really does become harassment in my book. But they will stop calling. But that, again, that could be a clue that identity's been stolen. If, just want to make sure it's not your 4 digits, because then you might need to do a little bit more investigating. Okay, a couple tips of what to do in the event that your ATM, credit cards, wallet, or checks are stolen. It kind of gives you a couple steps of things that you can do to, how to report it. And a lot of times when it says close the accounts immediately, a lot of times when you report to a credit card company, or even like with us, if a member calls in and says, hey, I think somebody got my debit card, we do what's called a close and reopen. We close the account, reopen it with a different number. So you still have all your history with us, but it's just a different account number. So that's something that a lot of companies can do. And especially if you see that charges are being made, no kidding, somebody has your identity, you want to contact the police and file a police report. And I do want to stress, there is a difference between, your information has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Compromised, and your identity's been stolen. For example, I told you my husband was in the military. Tri-West a few years ago, which is our insurance, essentially, had computers stolen. It has a lot of military social security numbers on those systems. So our information was compromised. We put what's called a fraud alert on our credit report, or on our credit. But we didn't call the police to say, hey, our identity's been stolen. We just made sure that our accounts were being monitored very closely. So there is a difference between compromised, possibility, and no kidding, identity theft. And you'd contact the police for identity theft. If you find inaccurate information on your credit report, one of the other reasons that I talked about last week that you want to check your credit report on a regular basis is there's a 50% error rate on credit reports. So you want to make sure your information's correct. With credit reports, just so you know, has anybody ever put a fraud alert on their social? Do you know how to do that? You can call any of the credit bureaus. You don't have to call all 3, Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax. You can call any of them and say, I'd like to put a fraud alert on my credit report. Actually, I don't even think you have to talk to a person. You can call in and they have your social and it'll say press whatever to put fraud alert on. And they automatically do it for all 3 bureaus. They let the other 2 bureaus know that. And again, and there are different types of fraud alert, and I think just a standard one is good for a year, and you have to renew it every year. Just a good idea. And all that really does is it stops you from, if you walk into department store and they say, hey, you get 10% off if you open this card right now, the credit card approving company will call and talk to you. You can't just get your account open like that. It just adds a little step. Okay, so other steps to defend. This is where my husband fails miserably. Do you carry your Social Security card in your wallet? If you do, why? You don't need to, and you shouldn't. Your Social Security card, you know, that's really the magic number. People want your Social Security number. You need to guard that number. One thing that I hate right now, even with the military, my military ID has my husband's social, has my social, has my birth date, has height, weight. There's a lot of information on that ID card. Do you want to know? I protect that ID card. I know where it is all the time. I'd probably lose my driver's license and 5 other cards before I lose that military ID. A lot of insurance companies have gone away from using Social Security numbers on cards. Some people have said, well, if I have a Medicare card, it has my Social Security number on it. Guess what? Make a photocopy of it, black out the number. You know what your number is. If you go in and they say, what's your Social Security number? This is what it is. But if you don't have to carry anything that has your Social Security number on around you, don't. And they list some things here about don't print your Social Security number on checks. I love this, again, especially being military. We had our Social Security number. I can remember when my husband was first in the military. We had it printed on our checks because I got tired of writing it. Every time we wrote a check on base, we had to put his social, we had to put his squadron, we had to put all this information. I said, I'm just having it printed on my checks. I'm telling you, it's crazy. Anyway, so yeah, you don't want to do that. Monitor your accounts on a regular basis, however you do that, online or when you get the paper copies. I kind of talked about this last week. If you get pre-approved credit card offers in the mail, here's the magic number and website that you can opt out of those. And just like the do not call register, it's not going to stop every pre-approved offer, but it will minimize. And your options are opt out for 5 years, opt out permanently, or opt back in. I love that. Hey, oops, I didn't mean to opt out permanently. Can you please start sending me them again? I need to opt back in. There is also the address on here to check your credit report. And again, if you have children, it's a good idea to check to see if they have a credit report as well. If they have a report, you should definitely do some checking if they're under 18, because that shouldn't be. And you know, as silly as this next one sounds, I will tell you my daughter was a teller for the credit union and told me people would come in with their PIN number written on the back of their debit card. At least make it tough for somebody to get your identity. Don't be putting your PIN number in your wallet next to your card. Go through your glove compartment of your car. If you order new checks, ask to pick them up at your financial institution instead of having them mailed to your house. Secure important documents. Again, if you don't have a safe or safety deposit box, at least a filing cabinet that locks. And I can sit here and say right now, I have a filing cabinet that locks, that right at this very moment is not locked. Probably not real smart, but again, see, and all of us aren't perfect either. I can teach this stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean I do all of it, but I try to be good. Okay, so what do you do if you become a victim? Definitely, if you see anything on a credit card or anything like that, whoever you have that card with, notify them immediately. If you wait and say, oh, gosh, you know, I've been meaning to call them for a week to tell them those charges aren't mine, the longer you wait, the more you're liable for. So if you notify them immediately, saying, you know, hey, those aren't my charges, whatever, that puts the flag on there, and you're typically on credit cards, again, If you report it immediately, you're not going to be liable. And if anything, it might be $50. But that varies by companies that you deal with. So let's see, fraud departments. I'm looking at I'm not going to read like every little line to you. Again, definitely file a police report. If your identity's been stolen, I will tell you, document, 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 document. Even if you find something on your credit report that's not yours and you want to dispute that, do it in writing. Have the documentation for it. So if for some reason it's not removed within 30 days and you've proven it's not yours, you have the documentation to continue to show that. One thing that I will touch on, actually, just before we go through a review and then if there's any final questions, in your packet there is information, and I'm gonna make the cameraman move. There is I think I have it in here. Oh, please tell me I do. Okay, this is just something that I told you I'm not going to give you like a big sales pitch, but I will just tell you a couple things that we offer at the credit union. Last week in the credit score class, one thing that I let everybody know about is if you haven't checked your credit report in a while and you want to know what it is and you want to know what your score is, we do that. It's a free service. You can fill out this form, bring it into one of our branches, and we have a branch right here on Van Buren, just like I could throw a stone and probably hit it from here. I got a really good arm. Anyway, we'll pull your credit report. We'll go over it with you, explain anything that you don't understand, and you don't have to be a member to do that. That is something that we do. Another thing is, if you decide that you want to be a member of Credit Union West, we have a free $5 to open your savings account. But this is really the important one. Our members, we partner with a company called Identity Theft 911. So if any of our members has their identity stolen, remember the hundreds of hours that I said you could spend restoring your good name? Identity Theft 911 does the legwork for you. They'll contact the credit bureaus, they'll contact they'll work with the police department for you. They will continue to monitor your credit for a year afterwards. This is a free service that all of our members are protected under. It's basically having somebody who knows what the steps are if your identity is stolen, and they walk through that with you, so you're not having to, do all of the legwork yourself. That I just think is kind of a cool thing. So even if you do nothing else than use the free $5, become a member, you've got identity theft protection. Again, kind of a neat thing. Okay, so have I bored you to tears yet? No? Okay, see, now the test comes. You didn't know I was going to test you, right? Now, we'll just go through some of these. If you receive a unsolicited offer for a pre-approved credit card in the mail, what should you do with it? Yay, somebody was listening. Shred it. What do you do if an expected credit card bill doesn't arrive? Yeah, suspect it might have been intercepted, so you want to call the credit card company and say, hey, I didn't get your bill. How much do I owe? How often do you check your credit report? Check it regularly. Well, what does that mean? Definitely you're entitled to one free credit report a year from each of the bureaus. You can do that either through annual credit report. They'll pull all 3 bureaus, or something that I talked about last week was you can stagger your reports. So say in January I want to pull from TransUnion, and then and I can contact TransUnion directly, and then I wait 4 months, and then I contact Experian and say I'd like my one free credit report, and then I wait 4 months and I contact Equifax. So that way the information is going to vary from credit reporting bureau or between them, but you're going to be able to kind of see on a regular basis what your credit report looks like. So that's a good idea. If you're sending mail, you know, now all the post office has those little drive-through mailboxes. You know, take the extra 5 minutes, especially if you're mailing checks, drop off your mail either at the post office or in a locked box somewhere. At this moment, where is your Social Security card? Hopefully you're answering C. I like, or I like the D. At my mother's house, I think. Not sure. Let's see. When you receive an unsolicited phone call, sorry, I jumped to the next page to number 9. Like I said, I don't want to bore you completely. When you receive an unsolicited phone call to buy something, you should. I like the listen to the sales pitch. No. Hang up. I'd tell people too, I am on the do not call register, and I am not shy to say, excuse me, I am on the do not call register. And then usually you get the, oh, but I'm with the firefighters union or something. You know, there are certain agencies that are allowed to call you anyway. Let's see. Yes.
My husband does things like asks them for their phone number so that he can call them when it's inconvenient for them.
I had one, I did have one person say, do you have a moment, you know, like, is this a good time? And I said, really, now is not a good time. And they immediately went right back into their spiel. Yeah. Well, don't ask me if it's a good time if you're going to ignore the answer. Yeah. Like, come on.
I've got a son-in-law that likes to get them on the phone, and he just drags them out. They're not doing any business.
I just don't have the energy.
I don't
By the end of the day, I'm like, that's where caller ID is really a nice thing. I go, don't recognize that. Oh, unknown number? I never answer that one. Okay, you receive an email from a foreign country, number 13, saying if you can help the sender transfer money out of the company, you will be rewarded. Delete it. I know. See, some of these, you guys are laughing going, guess what? There's a reason they've happened. Let's see. I'm flipping through. Number 16, where do you store your computer passwords? We're all going to start taking, what is that? Stuff that's supposed to help your memory? See, I can't even remember what. Thanks. See, I couldn't even remember what it was called. What is it? Ginkgo? Okay, yeah, that stuff. I had a friend who said, yeah, I take that stuff to improve my memory, but I never remember to take it. I'm like, oh, good. When you go out of town, you should suspend delivery of your newspaper and ask the post office to hold your mail. Yeah, you know, piling up newspapers in the driveway kind of lets people know that you're not home. Yes?
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
Like, we go back to Wisconsin for like 2 months. And,
oh, you're one of them.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Hey, that's my intent.
Yeah. And, well, we have one charge, M&I Bank. So then I call the bank and I say, okay, we'll be in Wisconsin from the date, and then we'll be back in Arizona from the other date. So they don't flag us when we get to Wisconsin. And then try to use that happened 2 years back, and oh my God.
That is a great point. And I've actually done that when we've done some of our military moves in the same day. I've used my credit card in, like, you know, Florida and Texas, and they go, wait a minute, how are they in these places? Again, credit card companies are getting much, much better with identifying what they would classify as suspicious activity, and they're getting so much better with contacting you saying, hey, we're just checking, this looked a little funny. And that does bring up a good thing. If you know that you are traveling out of the country, that's also a good idea to call before you go. So when you get there, your credit card company doesn't assume, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, you know, Bob's using his credit card over here in some strange country, and they go, we're not going to approve that. So it's a good idea to call and let them know. Great point. Number 20, you read in the newspaper that your credit card companies had a security breach and many credit card numbers were stolen or inadvertently revealed to a third party. You, D, call all of your credit card companies and financial institutions to ask for new accounts. This is where I kind of go, again, that's something where information may have been compromised. I don't know that I would necessarily just start asking for all new accounts. It kind of depends on what the breach was, and if it was with that one particular company, I might just change that account. So again, it's definitely worth contacting the company and finding out to what level the security breach was, and putting fraud alert on your Social Security number. Next week on Wednesday, we have our class on budgeting. So if that is something that interests you, please come out and spend next Wednesday evening with me as well. And then the following Wednesday, we have a class on teaching kids about money. I'm not actually going to be teaching that, but somebody else from the credit union will be teaching that. So thanks again.